I'm Nathan Ponchard, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the Audi RS Q8. It is the top model in Audi's RS range, one of 13 RS models now on sale in Australia, and it's top model because that's what Audi said it is, because it's the biggest, and she's big. She's just the same as a Q8 in size, which is a coupe version of a Q7, which means this car is 5 metres long, nearly 2 metres wide, and rides on a 3 metre wheelbase. It's a big car. It is closely related to the Porsche Cayenne Turbo because they both share the same platform, but the Audi's is bigger. And much the same way, the 4-litre twin-turbo V8 under the front, which Audi claims they led the development on, is the same as in a Cayenne Turbo, but bigger. 441 kilowatts and 800 newton meters compared to 404 and 770 in the Porsche, gives this car a 0 to 100 time of 3.8 seconds. It also gives the RS Q8 the world record for a Nurburgring lap time for an SUV, and that is 7 minutes and 42 seconds. And that is kind of astounding when you think that this thing weighs 2,240 kilos. The competitors for this car are pretty obvious. A BMW X6M, which is about $6,000 more than this car, and then you add another 10 grand from Mercedes-AMG GLE 63S, and then you add another 10 grand onto that for a Range Rover Sport SVR. So when you compare to the Rangie's 244 grand, the fact that this car is 208,500, if you ignore the $6,500 worth of Java Green metallic paint. Now, what makes the RS Q8 look different to a normal Q8? Well, quite a lot. Starting at the front here, we have this protruding single frame grille that is all in piano black, although it is available in carbon fiber for 9 grand, where you add carbon to the mirrors and to the insert on the back, which we'll see in a minute, and various other bits and pieces, and underneath the engine bay. But does it really need it? I would say yes, but then I'm not paying 9 grand for a bit of trim. So we've got the Audi grille here with the Audi rings, which are a $700 option to have in black. So, you know, what's 700 bucks when you're paying 210 grand? Coming around the side here, we have these huge air intakes, the same light shape as a normal Q8, but with an RS specific insert, and obviously Audi's signature lighting display when you unlock the car or when you lock the car, which is really cool and very Batman-esque. And as we come around here, the Australian car has standard 23-inch wheels, and every dynamic thing you can throw on this car as standard. What these 23-inch wheels are hiding here is also an enormous braking package. 420mm front discs with 10-piston calipers and 370mm rears with 6-piston calipers. However, you can spend $19,500 and get the carbon ceramic option, which gives you the biggest braking system in the world. It's 440mm front discs with 10-piston calipers and saves 34 kilos in unsprung mass. I haven't driven the ceramic version yet, but I would absolutely buy that. Now, the only other SUV I can think of that has 23-inch wheels is a Lamborghini Urus, and funnily enough, it's related to the RS Q8. Now, these tyres are 295/35 ZR23, which kind of blows your mind a bit. Also, the fact that this car has every single piece of dynamic tech that is available in the RS Q8 globally, which means it has adaptive air suspension with 7 modes and 90mm worth of high-riseable suspension, although I'm pretty much sure that that is the lowest it'll go. And how tough does it look? It also has a quattro rear differential that transfers drive torque between each rear wheel to help it turn into a corner, as does the all-wheel steering, which not only makes this 5-metre long bus have a decent turning circle, but enhances the turn-in. Down the side here, we have bespoke side skirts for the RS Q8. We have these little wheel arch extensions that help cover these massive wheels. This car is almost exactly 2 metres wide. It is a big car, so it needs those to fit those enormous wheels in it. We obviously have the frameless doors, which is great in this car. And down the back here, we have the same shaped tail lights as a Q8, but with a unique detail in them, much like the Matrix LED headlights at the front, which have the little signature when you turn the car on and off. Now, this panel in here kind of reminds me of the S1, where it has that little 70s black panel in the back of it. If you have the carbon fiber package, that is in carbon fiber, which doesn't look quite as 70s retro, but it's still really cool. It has this garnish along the bottom here, which is also available in the carbon fibre package, and the signature Audi RS tailpipes in oval. So when this thing's idling, you can just hear it pulsing between two rear pipes. You just want your dad to just get in and smash the crap out of it while you stand there and listen to it, because you know it's going to be amazing. I suppose the one thing that stands out about this car more than anything is that the RS Q8 is brash, and it's not normally something that Audi would do. Yet, even though it is brash, it's also cool, and it's retro, and yet it's modern. It's just, I don't know, I kind of love it. I love the way it looks anyway. The boot here is much like a Q7's, like large-ish. It's more than 600 litres. These backrests here go 40-20-40, all fold completely flat. There's plenty of room in this car. There's just so much quality in the RS Q8. Let's hope it drives the same. So just like the outside, the Australian RS Q8 is loaded inside. Just about everything that is available in the European car, many of which is an option, is standard in our car. Now, that starts with the leather, which is everywhere. It is all over the dash top here. It is even in this section underneath the windscreen here, and it's Nappa leather on the seats. We've got Alcantara on the doors. We've got this beautiful perforated leather steering wheel, and the only option in terms of trim is an RS design package. Now, it only costs $2,900, and I absolutely would get it because you get Alcantara on the steering wheel, you get either red or grey stitching with Nappa leather around this center armrest here, on the gear lever, rimming the edge of the seat belts here, and it's just a little bit more. And what's $3,000 when you're already paying more than 200 grand? The other thing that upgrades what I'm about to talk about is the sensory package, and it is just under 10 grand, and it changes this amazing Bang & Olufsen stereo. Now, the standard car has 17 speakers and 730 watts, and it sounds pretty good, but the sensory package version brings the absolute duck's guts. 23 speakers, 1920 watts. It is the closest experience I've ever had to taking some kind of illicit substance that I've ever done in a vehicle in my life. It is transcendental. And I know that that sounds wanky, but it's true. It really is that amazing. Now, the rest of the car is as per latest Audi generation, which means it's the peak screen game here. We've got this amazing touchscreen here with just this beautiful functionality and this seamless Apple CarPlay and the switching to Audi's own stuff. It's fast, it's intuitive. I love the HVAC stuff too, where you can either touch the buttons or you can slide up and down, which, you know, having those options is just a functionality thing. It's not just a fancy pants gadgetry thing. We have Drive Select here, which instantly brings that up. We also have the RS1 and RS2 modes, which lets you change the drive system between efficient, balanced and dynamic, suspension, comfortable, balanced and dynamic, steering the same, engine sound, who would choose subdued, come on, and Quattro Sport differential, comfortable, balanced and dynamic. This is in RS1 mode, and I've set it up this way to have balanced for the drive system and the suspension, but dynamic and max attack for everything else. And then we've got RS2, which is also accessible not only through the Drive Select here, but this button on the steering wheel that does the works. It changes the landing pad tachometer. You also have the same thing reflected in the head-up display in front of you. You also have standard seat heating and cooling. The back seat is also heated. In terms of practicality, we're in a Q7 on steroids, so that means everything is vastly roomy. We have enormous door pockets here, these terrific grab handles on the doors to hold on to, a great view, a much racier and better dash than in the Q7 in this car. We have this multi-height adjustable armrest in here, which is terrific, with the wireless charging underneath it, and 2 USB ports and a SIM card plug in there, and 2 cup holders here with a 12-volt outlet here. There's just so much to look at. It's hard to know what to talk about and what not to talk about. Let's get in the back. As you'd expect, the RS Q8 does not drop its quality game in the back here. It is exactly as outstanding as in the front. We're on a 3-metre wheelbase here, so there is an enormous amount of legroom and toe room. I'm sitting in the furthest position back with the backrest as far as it'll go. There are 3 positions for this backrest, and interestingly enough, you don't have to reach behind yourself like most cars. You can just do it on the side here. but it doesn't really give you that much recline. You also get this fore-aft adjustment, which goes all the way to here, which not only puts children closer to their parents in the front or whoever's looking after them, but also maximizes boot space behind. So in terms of family space, this thing's huge. You also have 2 netted map pockets here. You have air vents in the middle here with their own individual temperature adjustment and outside seat heating. We also have ashtrays in the back doors because that's important in Greece, although I wouldn't put cigarette ash in there. And we have electric sunblinds in the doors, which is quite cool, and kids are going to love annoying their parents with that. The other thing that I do really like about it though is that the Q8 has frameless doors, which the Q7 doesn't, even though the back windows don't quite wind all the way down. The thing that Audi Sport was aiming for with the RS Q8 was definitely speed. Like I said, it has the Nurburgring lap record and it has a lot of power, 441 kilowatts, but the Urus has 478 from the same engine and is slightly faster than it from 0 to 100. It does 3.6 seconds and the RS Q8 does 3.8. But by 200, the RS Q8 is 0.1 ahead. It's 12.7 versus 12.8 and it's faster around the Nurburgring. So that's something. And it's not exactly slow. It's got its 8-speed automatic, if you can hear that. It's a quick car. And when you add carbon ceramic brakes to it, the $19,500 option, it takes the top speed from 250 limited to 305. Like, that's as fast as an Urus, and it's faster than the Porsche Cayenne Turbo. Like Porsche though with the Cayenne, what Audi Sport was aiming for with this car was bandwidth, and it absolutely has that. I think the most interesting thing about the way that it performs is that it does it with so much refinement. It is a really quiet car. It doesn't have that much tyre noise from these huge 23-inch tyres, and it's just an effortless car to go quickly in. Now, where that perhaps doesn't necessarily work in its favour is that I want to hear more noise. And while we just heard full bore acceleration then, it's more of a lovely velvety roar inside the car than an out and out sort of crazed cackle. And that's kind of what I want. Now, with the dynamic stuff that the Australian car gets, this is the best the RS Q8 is ever going to be. I would probably option the carbon ceramic brakes, not for the 305 km/h top speed, but for the actual power of them. Because I kind of feel like the normal brakes, the 420, 370mm ones, are a little bit wooden sometimes unless they're warm, a little bit spongy when you're really having a go in it, even though they do pull the car up. In terms of the general driving of the car, I love sitting in the RS Q8. These seats are exceptional. They hold you in your seat perfectly, even when this thing is challenging itself in all those corners. Doing the one thing that I didn't mention when I walked around the car is that it actually has electromechanical active anti-roll. So you're combining the electromechanical anti-roll with these really huggy seats. You do feel like you're bolted into this car without feeling like you're in a race car, which is the whole point. The fact that it has 2 off-road modes and can go 90mm higher in the suspension will work in some environment. You can actually do surprising things with modern electronics and modern mechanical diff stuff, and I'm sure the RS Q8 can pull that off. Where it falls down for me a bit is in the steering. I suppose it is a little bit like the RS6 and RS7 in that it does take a bit to work out where the limits of the car are before you completely bond with it, but I think that that is more of an aspect in the RS Q8 because you are dealing with so much more weight, a couple of extra 100 kilos, and so much more height, more to the point. And so even though it has this active anti-roll, physics are physics. And so you can get the wheel here and do that, and you can actually feel the car like I'm moving and the car's moving, but there isn't really a whole lot of feel to it. It's all about what's happening at wheel level, and that it does feedback pretty well. There are a few moments of oddness where you can feel when the torque vectoring at the back is sent to max, you can feel it driving to the outside and really trying to drive the nose in, and you're combining that with forward steering. So that sounds kind of unnatural, and just a couple of little fragments of time, it does feel a little bit that way. However, for most of the time, the RS Q8 is actually quite fluent to drive, and fun to drive and a challenge to drive briskly. In terms of the drivability of the car, the engine is outstanding. It is effortless. It's pulling 1500 revs here and we're doing 107 k's an hour in 8th gear in drive. If you want sport, you just pulse it like that and it's in sport, and then it automatically makes the shift mapping perk up. It makes the exhaust a bit barkier, and it gives you this kick down that's just great, like really great. Love that. The combined fuel consumption number is not great. It's 12.1 litres per 100 k's, but you can get under 10 in one of these cars if you're on a freeway. And the other thing it gives you is feel-good factor. There is something about sitting in the RS Q8 that makes you feel special. It's a really cool cabin. And when you look at the outside, it's really cool as well. I don't think everyone's going to choose it in Java Green Metallic, but then if you don't, there's so many other options. And guess what? It comes in black like every other Audi. But more to the point, you don't have to add stuff to this car. It isn't something that you look at and go, oh geez, well by the time I've gone through that options list, I'm going to be adding $100 and something thousand to it. There are options of course, and we've been through those, but they're sensible ones and they're packaged together and they're not extortionate and they do add something to it. About the only thing that I wouldn't do is get the no cost option matte silver aluminium stuff, which changes all the black on the outside to silver and just makes it look like Dorksville. If you did that, I probably wouldn't invite you over for a barbecue. Sorry. It still does sound good though, but you can't drive it like that all the time. It's not like an AMG where you can potter around at 20 k's an hour and hear that gurgle and you go, you know what, I'm in traffic, but I don't care because listen to that sound. I feel like you're sort of chasing the dragon a bit in the RS Q8 and that you want to hear more of that noise, but that the only way you're going to hear it is by potentially risking your license, which might matter in Germany, but definitely matters here. When it comes down to it, the RS Q8 is not an R8. It's not an RS4. It's not an RS6 even. It's its own thing. It's not the last word in driving dynamics. I wish it had more steering feel, but at the same time, in terms of transcending the 2.2 tons that this car weighs and using every physics-defying piece of electronica and mechanical architecture to be able to go against that, it does a pretty impressive job. But finally, the fact that the RS Q8 is not just another Audi in white, silver, grey or black, and actually goes out on the edge to look a little bit different, a little bit cooler, just makes me want to love it because it wants to be itself. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video, hit the notification bell and leave a comment on the Audi RS Q8 or on Chasing Cars. Thanks for watching.